you talked about time you spent in North Carolina and how that was a real turning point to you. Um, Take us back to what happened and how that time away changed you personally from where you were at the time.
Yeah, I mean, this is what's so good now to look at where, like, reflect back on that, which I have been a lot recently with everything that's going on in my life, and I'm like, yeah, I'd hit essentially just hit a rock bottom, is because of everything. It was kind of a back thing of what happened with the WWE thing in 2016, which now I'm kind of at such a different place with now. Like, when the failing of that medical, I used to, dark shadow for the longest time, but recently, like I mentioned about some philosophy that I'd got into recently, particularly Taoism, and just like a lot of life lessons in that I kind of come away with and going, no, everything does genuinely happen for a reason, and I'm a much better adult now to handle the magnitude of this situation as well. I might not have been then. Now, like, I kind of look back on that differently now. But yeah, where I was then was I couldn't get past that. Like, I wasn't at that point yet. I was just at that point of, like, you had your dream, and all these stresses that you were having during the lockdown and the COVID and stuff, they wouldn't be there if you didn't feel that medical, and you wouldn't be in this financial situation, and your wedding wouldn't be cancelled because we were supposed to originally get married in 2020. All of those things, and when that, and then that snowballed, and coming out of the COVID slowly, and wrestling was like, it was weird for a while. Do you know what I mean? Like,
It really
certain
was.
places, yeah, like certain places just weren't running. One of the few places that were running was WAW and BWR, and they were both giving me work, but again, smaller crowds, and they could really profit from, like, this, because you had to have like the distancing and stuff like that. And it was just a very weird time, and I don't know where my head was with wrestling at that time either. And then I was having to, you know for those who don't know, like, I started wrestling at 15 years old, and then when I left college, I had a part-time job at a call center that lasted 3 months, and then Brian Dixon offered me the opportunity to go full-time with All Star Wrestling. And then from that day onward, at 19 years old, I was a professional wrestler. That was my livelihood, right? That was how I provided and lived the life I'd lived, and now it was gone. And to then adjust to waking up and realizing, this is what it's like to wake up on a Monday and go, effing hell, I've got work. Do you know what I mean? Like, I'd never really experienced that, and now it was really like, Jesus, this is and it sounds, to some people, it'll sound like, grow up, Nathan, and I get it, I completely do. But when the only life you've known is living your dreams, and you'd worked hard to make that happen and maintain that, and now you've been forced into something that you looked at and you really didn't want to do. Like, I didn't want to. I know, and that I empathize with anyone who does have a day, like a normal job, like, but it just wasn't for me. I'd avoided it, and now I was pushed into it, and I was forced into it. And because I was a pro wrestler all my life, I'm an unskilled worker at that. So, like, wrestling's my only skill. And it doesn't really necessarily apply to your 9 to 5,
Sure, yeah.
right? And so I was kind of like, yeah. I mean, I was a paint and decorator. I learned, so at least I got a bit of a trade. And then, and I was working for DPD as well, like delivering parcels. I'm doing that in between, and then wrestling, and just a lot of stress at that time. And I was at meltdown. Like, I just couldn't deal with it anymore. And yeah, Dan saw that and just offered me an opportunity to just get out of it for a bit. And there was, like, I went up to North Carolina, which I absolutely adore. I was up in the mountains. I was just in a cabin, and I was doing some yard work for him and some other bits and bobs. But I was just, my mind was at peace. I like working in, like, I think we mentioned before, I've got my pond and my garden. I enjoy gardening. I enjoy landscaping. So that was, like, good for me. I'm just out in the sun, and it was just beautiful, and it was a kind of a reset. And I had a really good conversation with Dax around that time, and he kind of just rewired me. And it was just a way of me looking at wrestling very differently for the first time in my life, where it was like, okay, yeah, it isn't the primary thing anymore, because it's no longer your full-time income, and you can't be like this, because you've got this wonderful fiance who stood by you for 10 years and she's a school teacher. So get on this: when she's off, I'm busy. When I'm not so busy, she's at work, so we wouldn't really see each other. Do you know what I mean? Like, summer would come, most couples get to spend the summer together. Back then it was, right, I'm on the road for the next 7 weeks and I'm wrestling 6 days a week. One of those shows is in Bridlington, so I'll be home for a few hours, but I'll have to go to the gym and I'm washing all my gear. You know, and like that takes a lot on a relationship. And she stood by me and supported me through all of that. You know, off to America for a couple of weeks because, you know, I might have this extra job at NXT, all these daft things where, you know, like, she just stood by me through everything. And it's like, oh, well, actually, you know, like, it isn't that bad, is it? You still got to live a portion of your dreams. And now you get to take care of this person who has, like, lovingly supported you through all of this. I guess it isn't that much of a bad ending if you know, if I do decide to call it a thing in 2026, which is where my head was. 20 years in the job and I'll say goodbye. And then since then, that was when I started really just, again, following and trusting in the universe, because I was then in a positive mindset. So instead of putting negative energy out there and everything that I didn't like was around me, all of a sudden I get that awesome opportunity to work on that wrestling game. And I'm doing that, and I'm getting to work from home and be with my dog. And so that's now your main income, and you're still wrestling. And, well, actually, this is really good. And you really become grateful for all of that. And you appreciate it more, and then other opportunities come in, and you're like, oh wow, like, yeah, you know, that's the secret. If I was to give the secret away to anyone, I kind of feel like it's the end of Scrooge when he's like, be kind, do good things, because if you do, and I genuinely do believe in that now, like, you put positive energy out into the universe will give it back to you. Like, and it might not happen how you want it. It might not happen how you think it should happen, but it'll happen how it's supposed to happen, because there'll be valuable lessons you need to learn on the way. And if you're mature enough to accept those lessons and have your ego challenged, it'll be the best thing that'll ever happen to you. And that's, you know, where I am now. That is exactly where I am now. I'm just like, this is awesome. Everything in my life right now is so good. I'm so grateful. There's challenges ahead, but I 100% believe everything works out exactly how it's supposed to work out in the end.